Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. What follows is intended solely for educational and entertainment purposes. This is the exact, word-for-word federal courtroom testimony from the Sean Diddy Combs trial, as covered by Inner City Press. The courtroom fell into a hush when an unexpected name was called to testify. Jada Pinkett Smith, the actress, businesswoman, and wife of Will Smith, took a steadying breath as she faced the jury. What she was about to reveal wasn't just startling. It sent a chill through the room. She testified that back in 2004, Diddy summoned her to a private meeting where he handed her a document known as a loyalty agreement. This wasn't a typical contract or business deal. It was something far darker, a chilling agreement demanding silence and obedience. When she refused to sign, she said Diddy locked eyes with her and warned, "You'll regret it in the next life." Her testimony shook the courtroom to its core. Now, for the first time, the truth behind that loyalty agreement, and why she kept quiet for so many years, is finally being exposed. The courtroom was already thick with tension when the bailiff unexpectedly called the name Jada Pinkett Smith. A collective gasp swept through the room. Even the prosecution appeared caught off guard, hinting this witness might have been added at the last minute, perhaps a choice made by Jada herself. She entered quietly, clad in a modest black suit, her expression unreadable. Yet every pair of eyes locked onto her as she approached the witness stand and placed her hand solemnly on the Bible. "I know this is unusual," she began, her voice steady but resolute, "but I can no longer stay silent." What came next would mark one of the trial's most unforgettable moments. Jada Pinkett Smith, celebrated for her acting, activism, and candidness, has now revealed a deeply buried secret, a story she had carried close for nearly 20 years, involving an alleged loyalty pact Diddy once pressured her to sign. Jada explained that she had been watching the trial from behind closed doors, absorbing every detail. She heard the names of women, assistants, and collaborators recounting experiences of coercion, strange contracts, and subtle threats. It was at that moment that something inside her shifted. The document she had once brushed off as simply eerie behavior on Diddy's part suddenly took on a far more sinister meaning, part of a vast and dark system she hadn't fully grasped before. "I don't need protection anymore," she declared firmly. "What I need now is to speak the truth. Back then, I only glimpsed the tip of something I didn't fully understand. But today, I see the entire iceberg." From the defense table, Diddy fixed his gaze on her, visibly unsettled. His lawyers hadn't anticipated this testimony either and swiftly moved to have it dismissed as irrelevant. The judge, however, refused to strike it, stating, if her statements align with other testimonies, they could reveal a pattern. Steeling herself, Jada took a deep breath and began recounting the story that would soon dominate headlines worldwide. She started with the day she met Diddy alone in 2004, when he presented her with what he called a spiritual agreement. Jada recalled the setting, a quiet, upscale suite at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. She had been invited under the guise of discussing a philanthropic project tied to music, activism, and community development. "It all sounded perfectly ordinary," she said, "exactly the kind of proposal one would expect from Diddy." When Jada arrived, Diddy was alone, dressed entirely in white, with soft jazz music playing from a small Bose speaker. The curtains were drawn, and the lighting was low, casting an intimate atmosphere. He offered her a glass of champagne, which she politely declined. He remained unusually calm. So calm, she later said, it felt rehearsed. After some brief, casual conversation, he excused himself and moved toward the small bar in the room. From behind the bar, he retrieved a black leather folder and silently handed it to her. Jada assumed it was a pitch deck or a contract, but it wasn't. The folder was labeled Loyalty Agreement. At first, she thought it was a joke, even nervously laughing and asking, "What is this? Some kind of hip-hop Scientology?" Diddy didn't laugh. Instead, he simply nodded and said, "It's protection for both of us." Inside was a typed document about 7 pages long. Jada noted it lacked any legal letterhead or indication that it came from a law firm, yet the tone was chilling. She described clauses demanding lifelong and beyond discretion on every personal and professional matter. The language spoke of alignment with an inner circle and, even more unsettling, the submission of one's soul to the greater cause of the legacy. Some parts didn't even sound human. She said it felt ancient, like a ritualistic pact. The document referenced unnamed individuals, hinted at ceremonies, and outlined severe penalties for betrayal. The document didn't demand money or creative control. It demanded silence, obedience, and eternal compliance. At the bottom was a signature line, with her name already typed beneath it. Jada said she felt sick, as if she were being inducted into something she couldn't comprehend. She returned the folder and simply said, "No, that's when," she testified. Diddy's tone shifted. In court, Jada began reading excerpts from the document, more accurately paraphrasing, since the original had mysteriously vanished from her home years earlier. "That's how much it haunted me," she told the jury. One clause read, "The undersigned agrees to uphold confidentiality, not only in this life, but in all spiritual transitions thereafter." Another line stated, "Any knowledge gained in sacred space shall remain sacred, never to be uttered in earthly court, church, or public sphere." Jada recalled nervously laughing the first time she saw it, asking, "Are you telling me this contract follows me after I die?" Diddy looked her straight in the eye and said, "You're starting to get it." The document detailed a strict hierarchy of silence, with layers of information accessible only through demonstrated loyalty. It referenced tests, secret gatherings, and repeatedly mentioned something called the selection, though it was never clearly defined. One chilling passage warned, "To break silence is to break the bond. Breaking the bond carries consequences, divine and otherwise." At this point, the courtroom fell into a heavy silence. Some jurors appeared visibly unsettled, while a few spectators looked shaken. Jada was quick to stress that she was sober that day and not spinning tales for dramatic effect. This was real, not a prank, not a publicity stunt. Diddy genuinely believed in the document, and he believed she would eventually sign it, but she didn't. And that's when she said Diddy delivered the chilling warning that still haunts her, "You'll regret it in the next life." That moment stayed with her for years. Though she walked away that day, she felt like something had followed her ever since. After refusing to sign the so-called loyalty agreement, Jada described a palpable shift in the room's energy, almost spiritual, but dark and threatening. The music stopped. Diddy's expression hardened, and he leaned in. His tone dropped low and slow, no longer playful or cryptic, but like he was reciting a familiar threat. He stared at her and said, "You'll regret it in the next life, not this one." Jada later explained to the jury she couldn't tell if he was warning her of physical harm or something metaphysical. It felt like a curse, like he believed he had power beyond this world. The courtroom grew quiet once more. When the prosecutor asked if she took the threat seriously, Jada didn't hesitate. "Absolutely," she said, "because it wasn't a joke to him. And suddenly, it wasn't a joke to me." Diddy didn't stop there. He began detailing what would happen if she defied him, warning that roles would dry up, opportunities would vanish, projects would suddenly crumble without explanation. Key producers stopped returning her calls. People around her distanced themselves, likely out of self-preservation. He never raised his voice or made physical threats, but Jada said it was the most terrifying moment she'd experienced in Hollywood. Then, with that rehearsed, smug grin, he told her, "Just think it over. You'll see. Everyone always comes back." Jada left the hotel suite immediately, no goodbyes, no looking back. She recalled trembling so uncontrollably that she struggled to insert the key into her car's ignition. "I saw a side of him I wasn't supposed to see," she confessed. That's when she realized whatever this was, whatever machine Diddy was running, it was far bigger than parties or gossip. After that frightening encounter in 2004, Jada chose silence. Not out of complicity, but out of fear. She admitted on the stand that this fear had followed her like a shadow for years. At every event, she found herself wondering who else had been presented with the same agreement. She started scanning rooms, searching for subtle signs. The same folder, the same phrase, that same hollow look she'd seen in Diddy's eyes that day. Slowly, she noticed a pattern. Women with promising careers disappearing, some falling silent, never giving interviews again. Others remained within Diddy's circle, even though their discomfort was clear in photos and videos. Jada described it as if they were trapped in a silent prison, bound by something they couldn't talk about. "I realized I had just barely escaped," she told the court, but escaping didn't bring peace. She shared haunting tales of recurring nightmares, an eerie sensation of being watched, and mysterious phone calls from unknown numbers where no one spoke. In an attempt to process everything, she began journaling, writing down her thoughts with a calming mantra, "Just breathe." But fear overtook her, and she eventually burned the journal to keep it from being discovered. "I didn't even tell Will," she admitted. "Not for years. I couldn't explain it. I didn't want him to think I was paranoid." Everything resurfaced, though, the moment this trial started. Hearing former assistants and dancers speak of NDAs, coercion, veiled threats, and strange spiritual language echoed her own experiences. That was when she knew it wasn't just her. She realized she wasn't losing her mind. This was happening to many. Deciding to testify wasn't easy. She understood it would reopen old wounds, draw intense media scrutiny, and potentially put her at risk again. But this time, the weight of silence was heavier than the danger. "I used to think staying quiet would protect me," she told the jury. "Now I know silence is what protects him." What followed wasn't just emotional, it was damning. The prosecution presented 2 more loyalty agreements uncovered during investigations into Diddy's former employees and associates. Though different in style and wording, both documents reflected the bizarre, unsettling elements Jada described with striking similarity. One came from a former assistant who claimed she received the folder in 2007. Another originated from an ex-dancer on a world tour in 2010. Both agreements contained clauses demanding silence beyond death, references to eternal contracts, and an intense focus on aligning with a mission of legacy through sacrifice. Jurors carefully examined the exhibits, visibly unsettled. The parallels to Jada's account were unmistakable, but the revelations didn't stop there. A forensic handwriting expert was called to analyze the markings on all 3 documents. The verdict, although the typed text differed, the handwritten notes, underlines, side comments, and a mysterious symbol resembling an eye within a circle matched Diddy's handwriting. When the prosecution asked Jada if she recognized the symbol, she nodded quietly and explained, "He told me it was the Watcher. It's meant to protect him and punish those who betray the mission." Diddy's legal team immediately challenged the evidence, labeling the documents as fabrications and accusing the prosecution of conspiracy. The judge, however, overruled their objections, pointing out that the consistency across 3 separate testimonies, supported by forensic analysis, merited further investigation. The courtroom audience was visibly shaken. One spectator even fainted during the reading of the 3rd contract and had to be escorted out. This was no longer a mere celebrity scandal. It was starting to resemble a spiritual cult, masked as a loyalty agreement. Jada's calm yet haunting testimony made it clear this was far beyond paperwork. This was a system built on fear, silence, and total control. As Jada pressed on, it became evident her testimony wasn't just a personal caution. It was a rare glimpse into what Hollywood insiders had long whispered about behind closed doors. She revealed how she'd spent years carefully avoiding certain individuals, steering clear of specific events, and turning down lavish invitations because she understood what lay beneath the surface. "There are entire calendars devoted to tracking who's hosting which party," she explained. "And when it's Diddy, you already know what that implies." She recalled moments on red carpets where female artists exchanged knowing looks whenever Diddy appeared. Assistants used coded language to discuss invitations, phrases like the upstairs room, midnight circle, and bringing your aura, quietly signaling who might be invited into what Jada described as his net. "I wasn't the only one approached," she stressed. "I was just one of the few who said no and survived." Over the years, she quietly warned a handful of others to be careful. She didn't always share the full story. It was too risky, but found subtle ways to drop hints and steer them away. Some heeded the warnings, others didn't. Some of those who didn't listen disappeared from the public eye soon after. Jada also revealed that a few had privately confessed similar experiences with Diddy, being handed these agreements, offered access to elite opportunities in exchange for loyalty and silence. It was always presented as an opportunity, never overtly a threat. But beneath every word was an unspoken threat. She told the court that those who suddenly vanished or fell out of favor weren't just taking breaks. Many, she believed, had been broken by the very system they'd been invited into. Her voice remained steady, but the darkness of her testimony deepened. "If this trial hadn't happened, I never would have spoken," she said firmly. "Everyone thinks the worst thing you can do is say no to power. I promise you, the worst thing is staying silent and letting that power grow." Throughout her testimony, All eyes occasionally flicked to Diddy, whose reactions were telling. At first, Diddy appeared impassive, leaning back in his chair with his head bowed, seemingly trying to mask his emotions. But as Jada read sections of the document aloud and recounted their 2004 meeting, his demeanor shifted. He leaned forward, rubbing his temples in visible discomfort. His defense attorney whispered to him several times, but Diddy only gave tight nods and dismissed their concerns. What stood out most were the moments when Jada turned his own words against him. Each time she repeated the chilling phrase, "You'll regret it in the next life," he visibly flinched. When she described the symbol known as the Watcher, Diddy looked away, refusing to meet her or the jury's gaze. For the first time in the trial, he seemed utterly unprepared. Courtroom sketch artists captured these moments, and the images quickly circulated online. One reporter described Diddy's expression as haunted. Murmurs spread through the gallery as journalists whispered among themselves. Even the judge had to call twice for silence in the courtroom. At one point, Diddy pulled out a notepad and began scribbling furiously. His legal team huddled, requesting a sidebar with the judge, reportedly seeking to have Jada's testimony struck from the record. The judge, however, refused, stating, "This witness came voluntarily. Her experience is relevant to understanding the broader allegations." The tension only intensified when Jada highlighted the striking similarities between her loyalty agreement and others presented in the case. That was the moment his hand began to tremble. A courtroom observer tweeted, "He wiped his face. He wasn't in control anymore." Throughout her testimony, Jada never once looked at him until the very end. When asked if she had a final statement, she turned toward him for the first time and said, "You always told me I'd regret saying no, but look around. You're the one on trial, not me." Diddy froze. The atmosphere in the room was charged with electricity. For the first time in the entire proceeding, the silence wasn't a shield. It was the arrival of accountability, unfolding word by word. As Jada Pinkett Smith stepped down from the witness stand, the courtroom was left stunned. Outside those courthouse walls, the ripple effect of her testimony was already roaring through the entertainment world. Headlines erupted like wildfire. Jada breaks silence, exposes Diddy's dark pact, "You'll regret it in the next life," and inside Diddy's loyalty agreement, cult-like contracts in Hollywood. Social media exploded with reactions. Some celebrities shared cryptic, vague tweets, some signaling support, others discomfort. A-list names trended as fans speculated who else might have been offered the infamous folder. Podcasts dissected every word Jada spoke. Journalists started connecting dots between unexplained disappearances, sudden career collapses, and long-ignored rumors. The courtroom testimony had sparked a movement. The district attorney's office confirmed more subpoenas were on the way. Reports indicated investigations had already begun into suspicious patterns tied to Diddy's contracts, shell companies, and legal teams enforcing silence. A legal analyst told CNN, "If these documents are genuine and more celebrities step forward, this could become the largest entertainment scandal since Weinstein, maybe even bigger." Jada's courage didn't just expose one man, it revealed an entire web. What made it even more chilling was the spiritual, almost otherworldly nature of Diddy's influence. His alleged belief in contracts that extended beyond this life. His symbolic use of the Watcher. Threats cloaked as cosmic prophecies. He wasn't just trying to silence people, Jada warned. He was trying to own them. The judge ordered a thorough review of Jada's claims. Her credibility, career, and public reputation worked strongly in her favor. Even skeptics had to concede she had nothing to gain by testifying. She was risking everything. As the session closed that day, reporters noted a strange calm settle over the courtroom. A storm had passed, but everyone knew another was coming, because now the world was watching, and someone would have to answer for it all. In the days following her testimony, Jada reportedly began receiving messages, not from media or fans, but from other celebrities, quiet phone calls, anonymous texts, a handful of DMs from former colleagues. Most carried the same message: "Thank you for saying what we couldn't." Sources close to the courthouse revealed that several individuals who had previously refused to testify were now reaching out to the district attorney's office. Jada's bravery had cracked the seal. The dam of silence was finally breaking. What few knew until now was that Jada had tried to warn others years earlier. In a private lunch back in early 2016, she reportedly met with Beyoncé, Solange, and two other unnamed women in the music industry. It was presented as a casual gathering of powerful women. No press, no assistants, no photographers, just quiet, candid conversation. But one topic hovered over their conversation: Diddy. Jada warned them that if anyone ever approached them with anything spiritual, loyalty-based, or focused on legacy, from Diddy or anyone in his circle, they should run. Don't even entertain it. Don't be polite. Just walk away, she reportedly urged. When Beyoncé asked why she was so insistent, Jada allegedly replied, "Because he believes he's untouchable. He doesn't need consent. He demands control. And when you say no, you're not just refusing a man, you're rejecting something far darker." No one else at that table spoke up then, but Jada said she saw it in their eyes: recognition, discomfort, maybe even guilt. This detail resurfaced in court when a journalist brought it up during a sidebar interview with one of Jada's close friends. She didn't want to turn it into a war. Her goal was to protect people without pulling them into the fight. But she always feared that if nobody spoke out, he would only grow bolder. The aftershocks from Jada's testimony are still reverberating. Several production companies are now under investigation for coercive contracts linked to Diddy's name. One music streaming service quietly pulled several curated playlists, reportedly removing artists believed to be under the protection of Diddy's team. Meanwhile, a fashion brand scrapped an unreleased ad campaign that featured archived photos of Diddy, alongside the tagline, "Legacy Lives Forever." Through it all, Jada has remained silent to the press. A close source reveals that her silence is intentional. She's allowing her testimony to resonate without distraction or distortion. She said what she needed to say, the source shared. Now she wants the world to truly absorb it. Even in her quiet, Jada's decision to break her silence may mark the first real crack in a decades-long chain of fear, because now others are stepping forward.